couldn't find this one initially.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Bhagavan Shri Bhagavan Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to everyone to this ISKCON New Mayapur Dham. Morning class. Obviously, we are wondering why. Is this a festival day? Must be, right? His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshava, there is always a festival, right?
Yes.
So this personality doesn't really require much introduction, I'm sure. But nonetheless, his name is His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj. Within ISKCON, he is the first sannyasi in the third generation, youngest sannyasi. And we're very, very fortunate that he's taken out time from his worldwide travels to come and spend some time with us and give us his association. So, just like traditional ISKCON ways, I'd like to welcome him with 3 loud Haribols. Haribol! 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 So I won't take too much time because I understand the time is ticking and we want to hear from Maharaj. So he's going to be with us for the next few days. So take the opportunity to take as much of his association as you can. Shri Prabhupada ki.
Thank you so much. Sankirtan Priya is also from London. Thank you so much. Really honored to be with everyone here. New Mayapur Dham is a real embassy of the spiritual world, such an important project within Srila Prabhupada's movement. And first and foremost, we come here to get the mercy of the lordships of Srila Prabhupada and of all the devotees here who have given their lives in service. It's a deep inspiration. And thank you for also allowing me to do a little bit of service by sharing something from Srimad Bhagavatam. So with the permission of the devotees, Maharaja, so many disciples of Srila Prabhupada here, senior devotees. Today we'll read from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're reading from Canto number 4, chapter number 30, entitled The Activities of the Prachetas. And this is text number 35. So just some context is important to know. It's okay, I'm not too fast. London is sometimes fast place. Okay, not too fast. If I go too fast. King Prachina Vaishat was a very powerful king, and 4:30:35. And one of the main one of the main concerns of a king is how things will go on beyond their own life. So he had sons, the Prachetas, and they were very, very qualified, but he wanted them to also procreate, to ensure that the generation goes on. So therefore, the Prachetas knew the order of their father, and therefore before procreating, they decided to go and do some austerities. Procreation is a very, very responsible task because it's mentioned that the consciousness of the parents determines the consciousness of the child. And therefore, when the parents are in good consciousness, then it ensures good progeny that will lead in a very beautiful way. And so the Prachetas, before going into married life, they went for austerities. And they went underwater for many, many thousands of years. Generally, when individuals would want to do austerities, they would go either very high in the mountains or very low under the ground, or very far into the forest. In other words, away from everyone else. And so this time the Prachetas decided to go low underground. So they went underwater for austerities. And it said they did austerities for 10,000 years. And then they emerged. And when they emerged from the water, the Lord appeared before them. And the Lord said, I'm so pleased with you. And the interesting thing is, the Lord was pleased with them not because so much of their austerities. Why was the Lord very, very pleased with them? Because He said, you've lived together in friendly relationships. The biggest austerity is to be friends with each other. It's interesting. Srila Prabhupada, he wrote that letter, he made that famous statement that your love for me will be shown by how much you cooperate together. But the context of that statement, if I remember correctly, is Tamal Krishna Maharaj was with Srila Prabhupada, and someone had written a letter to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was very sick by this time, and they had written a letter, and they said, just like in the Bhagavatam, the youth of I think it was Yadu, was given away to Kuru. Right? Yeah. One person sacrificed their young age to give it to someone who was very, very old so that they could live longer. So this devotee had written a letter to Prabhupada and said, I want to give you my youth so that you can live longer. In other words, he was saying, I'm ready to give up my life. I want you to live longer. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj read this to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada smiled and he said, that is very nice, but your love will be shown for me by how much you cooperate. So that's interesting. More difficult than to even kill your body is to kill your ego and cooperate. So the Lord said, I'm very pleased by your friendly relationships. And then in these verses, the Prachetas are praying to the Lord, and in this very particular verse, very beautiful verse, they explain how it is that they were able to live together in great friendship. So please repeat after me. Yatra dhyante katha mrishtas Krishnaya prashamo jata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nirvego yatra kaschana Yatra dhyante katha mrishtas Krishnaya prashamo yata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nirvego yatra kaschana Yatra dhyante katha mrishta Krishnaya prashamo jata Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nirvego yatra kaschana
Yatradante kathamrishta Krishnaya prashamo yatha Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nirvego yatra kaschana Yatradhyante kathamrishta Krishnaya prashamo yataha Nirvairam yatra bhuteshu Nirvego yatra kaschana.
Ladies.
Yatradhyante kathamrishtas Krishnaya prashamo yataha Nirvairam Krishnaya Prashamodaya Nirvayam Yatra Bhuteshu Nodeko Yatra
Jatra Vidyante are worshipped or discussed. Katha words Vishta pure Vishnaya of material hankerings. Rashama satisfaction. Jataha by which Nirvedam non-enviousness. Yatra where Bhuteshu among living entities. Not Udvega fear. Yatra where Kaschana any. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, may Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: whenever pure topics of the transcendental world are discussed, the members of the audience forget all kinds of material hankerings, at least for the time being. Not only that, but they are no longer envious of one another, nor do they suffer from anxiety or fear. It's very beautiful purport, one of my most favorite purports of the Bhagavatam. Purport. Vaikuntha means without anxiety, and the material world means full of anxiety. As stated by Prahlad Maharaj, Sada Samudvigna Diyam Asatgrihat. The living entities who have accepted this material world as a residence are full of anxiety. A place immediately becomes Vaikuntha whenever the holy topics of the personality of Godhead are discussed by pure devotees. This is the process of Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, chanting and hearing about the Supreme Lord Vishnu. As the Supreme Lord Himself confirms, Naham Distami Vaikunthe Yoginam Videshuva Tatra Desnaminadada Yatra Gayanti Madhbhakta. My dear Narada, actually I do not reside in my abode Vaikuntha, nor do I reside within the hearts of the yogis. But I reside in that place where my pure devotees chant my holy name and discuss my form, pastimes and qualities. Because of the presence of the Lord in the form of transcendental vibration, the Vaikuntha atmosphere is evoked. This atmosphere is without fear and anxiety. One living entity does not fear another. By hearing the holy names and glories of the Lord, a person executes pious activities. Shrinvatam Svakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana 1-2-17 Bhagavatam. Thus his material hankerings immediately stop. This Sankirtan movement, started by the Society of Krishna Consciousness, is meant for creating Vaikuntha, the transcendental world that is without anxiety, even in this material world. The method is the propagation of the Shravanam Kirtanam process throughout the world. In the material world, everyone is envious of his fellow man. Animalistic envy exists in human society as long as there is no performance of Sankirtan Yagya, the chanting of the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The Prajetas therefore decided to remain always in the society of devotees, and they considered that to be the highest benediction possible in human life. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There's this very famous lecture of Srila Prabhupada at San Francisco Ratha Yatra, and he is addressing the whole world, the whole massive audience, and he says, and if all of you become Krishna conscious, then there will be Vaikuntha on earth. It's very transcendental lecture. So yes, Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta, wherever the devotees are absorbed in the spiritual energy, then the Supreme Lord appears. In the South Indian tradition, there's famous stories of the Alvars. And once it's mentioned that one Alvar was walking and a huge storm broke out. So as the storm broke out, he ran for shelter and he found a little wooden cabin. It was very tiny, but it was enough for him to sit down and lie down. So as the rain was raging outside, he just went to lie down. And then after a few minutes, there was a knock on the door. And there was another one of the Alvars. So he said, "Can I come in?" And the Alvar who was inside, he said, "Where one person can lie down, two people can sit." And so he let him in. And there they were, sitting next to each other for the whole night. What to do? But they began discussing all about Krishna. And then after some time, there was another knock on the door. It was another Alvar. He said, "Can I come in?" He said, "Where one can lie down, two can sit. And where two can sit, three can stand." And so the third one came in. So, they were just standing there together. Sometimes it's a little, when you're in a lift with people, it's kind of a little like, you're all there in the lift together looking at each other. It's a little uncomfortable, like after some time, you're like, when is the floor going to come? So they were just standing there, but they were totally okay. They were just together. They were chanting, they were discussing Krishna Katha. And in the morning, the sun rose. And then one of them looked at each other and they say, "Isn't it amazing? Where one can lie down, two can sit. And where two can sit, three can stand. And three can stand for the whole night." And then a voice came from the sky saying, "Where three can stand, four will stay." Who's that? And it was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because he said, "Yatra Gayanti Mad Bhakta Tatra Tistami Narada." Because you all chanted together, there wasn't just three of you in that shed. I was also there. So that's very beautiful. Sometimes such a simple point, but as we become more and more absorbed in Krishna, then all anxiety disappears because the Supreme Lord appears. The association of devotees is kind of a mystical thing. Because it's like the association of devotees sometimes is the hardest thing in the world, and simultaneously the most easy and effortless thing in the world. Sometimes in the association of devotees we can find frustration and sometimes anger to no extent. And sometimes we find the most beautiful manifestations of love as well. It's amazing that sometimes when we're with devotees, we just think, "I'm done. I need a break." And the moment we're away, we're thinking, when will I be able to go back? It's amazing that the association of devotees brings so many different emotions within our mind. But all of the experience that we have in the association of devotees and in the association of our communities is dependent on this point. Yatridyante katham rishtas is all dependent upon the absorption of every single individual. It's mentioned that there are 5 types of dham. There's the original holy dham in the spiritual world. Then there's Bhoma Vrindavan, which is when Krishna is manifest on this world. Then there's something called Drishyamana Vrindavan, which is the dham in this world when Krishna disappears, remains completely spiritual. And then it's explained Hridistan. There's the dham which is in the heart of the pure devotee. And then it's mentioned that there's the creative Dham, the Dham which is envisioned by the pure devotee. And what the teachers explain, the acharyas, is that each one of these actually have equal potency. However, it's said that the Bhoma, earthly Vrindavan, the spiritual Vrindavan, these ones are special. Because it doesn't matter what goes on there and what happens there, their spiritual potency is never reduced. But it said the creative Dham can be as powerful as Bhoma, as powerful as the spiritual world, but it depends upon the absorption of each of the individuals who make up that community. And so, the potentiality is there, as Srila Prabhupada envisaged, that each one of these communities would become the spiritual world. This is what he's mentioning here. But it all depends on absorption. You see, in the world, people measure their wealth in different ways. We measure wealth sometimes in a very gross way. How much money do I have? Or someone may say, no, it's not about money, it's about how much gold you have. Because money is fluctuating, it's artificial. Gold is real wealth. But then the Shastras say even more than that is if you have land and cows, that's wealth. Because you can't eat gold. But then if we go beyond gross wealth, we can say there's subtle wealth. If you have time, if you have health, then you have wealth. Or if you have reputation, then you have wealth. Or someone could say if you have knowledge or austerity, then you have wealth. However, higher than even this kind of wealth is spiritual wealth. And spiritual wealth is measured by one thing and one thing only. How much ability one has to be absorbed in the transcendental vibration of the holy name and the holy narrations. This is the one and only measure of one's transcendental wealth. Therefore, the word sadhana is an interesting word. It can be defined in different ways, but the Sanskrit dictionary says sadhana iti sadhana. In other words, one who has strong spiritual practice, one who's absorbed, they are said to be, their sadhana makes them sadhana, endowed with the greatest wealth. Because the only wealth in this world is the wealth of being absorbed in Krishna. There's no solutions in the world. The only solution is to be absorbed in Krishna. And therefore, devotees, they don't try to solve their problems. They don't try to solve it well. Well, they do. But they realize no matter what they do on the external level to try and make a peaceful situation in this world, it will never work. Therefore, the only opportunity is the opportunity to be absorbed. And so, Krishna consciousness is actually culture of absorption. And we see, for example, Srila Prabhupada was able to do incredible things, was able to bring people together in an incredible way, was able to move things in the material world like mammoth tasks. But it all began from internal absorption. Sometimes we tell people devotees live in the invisible world because their time alone with Krishna, their time absorbed in hearing and chanting, empowers them in everything else that they do. The whole world saw Prabhupada's achievements, but how many people saw Prabhupada when he was all alone between 59 and 65? Absorbed in Krishna in the Radha Damodar temple? That the world didn't see. The world didn't see Prabhupada when he was all alone in the cargo ship and he was taking shelter of Krishna there. He said, I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, which was like the nectarine of life. The whole world didn't see that. The whole world didn't see Prabhupada when he was awake in the morning before everyone else was moving. And all alone in his room, he was translating Srimad Bhagavatam. No one saw that. No one saw Prabhupada when he was all alone, struggling in New York with no help, with no support. Nobody saw that. But it was Prabhupada's time in absorption in all of these moments. Of course, Prabhupada is a pure devotee. He was meant to do all of this. But we can take the lesson that this absorption empowers one to do amazing things. But it's amazing that in Krishna consciousness, the first thing that happens when life gets intense is our absorption goes down. Which almost seems like the greatest loss. Because when the intensity rises, the absorption must rise. Otherwise, no sustainable. Otherwise, no solution. And so, this culture of absorption is really what makes everything transcendental. Prabhupada once wrote a letter to one of his disciples and said, if you don't have significant hearing and chanting, eventually all of your service will become a big burden. He writes in the letter, you will look at your spiritual master and think, he has left me a big burden. No, sevaya dikada diye koromija dasi. To serve is a privilege. To serve is our greatest wealth, our greatest opportunity, but it means we must be absorbed. So, when the individual is absorbed, then they become free of fear and anxiety. Here is mentioned. The whole world is fearful. Jiva Goswami, he commentates on the Bhagavad Gita, and he analyzes that the very first thing that Krishna says to Arjuna, first instruction, Vasocyan vasocastvam brakyavadamscha bhashashe gatasun agatasuncha na anusochanti pandita. The very first instruction, Jiva says that Krishna gives to Arjuna, na sochati. Don't lament, don't be fearful, don't be in anxiety. And then Jiva Goswami looks at the Gita and he says the very final instruction that Krishna gives to Arjuna, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam saranam braja handvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma sucha. The very first thing Jiva says and the very last thing that Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is don't fear, don't be in anxiety, don't be bewildered, don't be overwhelmed. Because Jiva Goswami says this is the basic condition of every single human being. The Ishopanishad says, Om Purnam Adapurnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. That the Supreme Lord is perfect and complete. And everything and everyone emanating from that supreme complete whole is also complete. But when we forget our connection with Krishna, when we're disconnected from transcendental vibration, then we feel incomplete. And when we feel incomplete, then we feel insecure. And when we feel insecure, then we feel fear. And when we're fearful, there is also envy, competition, and all of these other things come about. Therefore, a community becomes Vaikuntha when all of the individuals are as much as possible absorbed. Because then the individual fear and envy is removed, and then when they come together, then it becomes something very, very powerful. So, this is the secret of how to create Vaikuntha. In a community, it can be a spirit of comparison. or it can be in a spirit of appreciation. In a community, it can be in a spirit of competition, or it can be in a spirit of collaboration. In a community, it can be in a spirit of criticizing, or it can be in the spirit of understanding. Like this, in a community, it can be in a spirit of complaining, or it can be in a spirit of contributing. In a community, it can be in a spirit of cutting. When something goes wrong, we cut relationships. Or it can be in a spirit of creating. No, we must always build bridges, create bridges with each other. And the one thing only that's going to determine whether this shift is made from one to the other is the spiritual absorption. Simple as that. Now it's difficult because we are practical people and we're all on the ground, and there are many, many practical concerns. And practical concerns need to be attended to. The difficulty comes when we put so much effort into the practical considerations that we forget that all of the practical considerations will be rendered very limited in their ability to create community if they don't help us to become more absorbed. And so, here in this verse of the Bhagavatam is being mentioned that when pure talks of the Lord are going on, Prabhupada adds in the famous extra bit in the verse, at least for the time being. Prabhupada adds that into the translation. Everything is perfect, at least for the time being. And what Prabhupada is basically saying is that when we come out of the vibration, when we come out of the absorption, when we come out of the contact with Krishna through our spiritual status, then all the fear, all the envy, all the disunity comes back in. And so Prabhupada writes another letter to a GBC, and throughout the whole letter he's telling all the duties. And then it's interesting, in the final part of the letter, Prabhupada says to the GBC, and don't forget your main duty is to become mad after Krishna. In the letter he's saying, pay this, go to this person, get this legal agreement, make sure you do that, all of that. And then Prabhupada says, don't forget the main thing, become mad after Krishna. Because only then will we be able to stay focused, stay happy, stay joyful, and then spread that joy to others. So like this, the Bhagavatam always brings us back to this point. And therefore, Sanatana Goswami says of the Bhagavatam, Madeka Bandhu, Mat Sangin, Mat Guru, Mat Mahadana, Mat Nishtarika, Mat Bhagya, Mat Ananda, Namostute. He says the Bhagavatam, so the transcendental vibrations of the Bhagavatam, Madeka Bandhu is my only friend. Mat Sangin is my constant companion. Mat Guru is my teacher. Mat Nishtarika, the Bhagavatam is always lifting me up. Mad Bhagya is my greatest fortune in the Bhagavatam. Madhananda is the source of all my happiness. Namostute, therefore I always keep the Bhagavatam close. So yes, these are some thoughts. Prabhupada has set us all a very high expectation. He says the Krishna consciousness movement is meant to make Vaikuntha on earth. It's like, wow. No pressure. And it all begins with each individual, because we are all building blocks within that community. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. So these are just some thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I'll need to leave just like, I don't know how long we're supposed to go for, but I need to leave like 10 minutes before 9. Do we have that much time for Q&A?
Yes.
Microphone here.
Alright, yeah, if there are any comments, questions, corrections, or anything, you have to pick.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. You said in your class that to become absorbed, we need to intensify our hearing and chanting. But how can we become absorbed when the mind is disturbed? So how can we fix the mind on Krishna?
It's like saying, how can I do exercise? I'm not fit. You do exercise to get fit. If someone says, I don't have 10 minutes to meditate, I can't do it, my mind's too restless, we look at them and say, then you should do 20. Sadhana is hard, but living with a restless mind is even harder. Exercising is hard, but being ill is even harder. Studying for your exams is hard, but failing your exams is even harder. And therefore, it's not that we wait for a time when we can be absorbed. We have to apply ourselves. So that means at least externally, when you do your sadhana, give it the best part of the day. When you do your sadhana, do it in the best environment. When you do your sadhana, if you externally give it priority, then internally, naturally, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prem. This is your activity. This is your life. This is what you want to do all the time. It's just we don't know it. Therefore, I tell people where there's attention, then there'll be attraction, and then there'll be attachment. You may say, I don't have the attention, but the point is at least you can give the attention in the externals first. That you're in control of. But what happens is we don't even give the attention in the externals. We don't give it the best time of day. We don't do it consistently. We don't shut off all our devices and say, I'm not speaking to the world now. I'm alone with Krishna. When we make boundaries to make it a priority, then even though your mind is a little, it will come. Because this is natural. This is you. It's like I remember I used to always go to Vrindavan in January. I used to go after the marathon. And the whole idea was for a month, I'm going to absorb myself. So you arrive in Vrindavan and you're like, this is amazing. I'm in Vrindavan, just on the marathon. Now I can just read. And after about 1.5 days, you're like, oh my God, I have to do this for a month? You feel so restless. But the amazing thing is when you just put your head down and you just say, no, I'm here. This is my activity. This is what I'm made for. Then what happens is it's a struggle for 3, 4, 5 days. But then by the 6th or the 7th day, you begin getting into the flow. Like, this is amazing. This is wonderful. But because we're endlessly busy, because we're endlessly active, to slow down our consciousness and be absorbed, it requires a change of energy. So at least start giving attention, at least practically, to doing it. If we read Bhagavatam and the phone is right next to us with all the notifications going off, how will we get absorbed? For the first 4 hours of the day, best not to look at your phone, if you can. Just, it's okay. The world is going to be waiting for you. It's alright. It's okay. No worries. Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but Napoleon, of course we can also quote Napoleon sometimes. Apparently he would not answer, I'm not suggesting you do this, but he would not answer correspondence for something like 15 days or something. And his theory was after 15 days, if it still needs to be replied, then it means it really needed my participation. Otherwise, the world works itself out. Again, I'm not suggesting that the managers here employ this technique. I might not be invited back here. But there's something to learn from that. Some fires in the world just have to burn. It's okay. Learn to live with chaos. So, again, I'm just trying to give the balanced statement. Otherwise, if we say, oh, but I can't get absorbed because my mind is too inactive, what is going to make your mind peaceful? Sada samudvigna. But Lord Maharaj is saying, everyone is completely fearful. Jiva says, from the beginning to the end, is the condition. The only way is abhay charan, become fearless. I think so. Easier than thinking yourself into a new way of acting is acting yourself into a new way of thinking. Begin with what you're in control of. Begin with the gross, and then the subtle usually comes. Anyway, I don't know if that helps. If that was too impractical. Yes.
What's the most terrible fear?
What's the most terrible fear? Well, Krishna says, Neha Bhikramana Sosti Pratyavayo Navidyate Svalpam Apya Sadharmasya Krayate Mahato Bhayat. He says, you become freed from the greatest fear. And the greatest fear is to descend further and further away from Krishna. That's the greatest fear. Because the Bhagavatam actually explains where fear comes from. Bhayam vidya bhiniveshata shad ishad paitasya viparya yoshmiti tanmayayato buddha abhajatam bhaktyayaka yesham gurudeva tatma. Where does fear come from? Step number 1, ishad paitasya. You turn away from Krishna. Step 1. You look away from Krishna. Krishna bahir mukha. You look away. Then, when you look away from Krishna, what's the second thing that happens? Then maya yato. Then you become overcome by maya. And then, third step, vidya. Now you've looked away from Krishna, you're overcome by maya, you begin to see a second reality. Welcome to the Matrix. That's basically what it is. You see a reality that's not a reality. You begin thinking it's all reality. This is it. And when you see this world and everything in it as reality, then necessarily Krishna says, Bhayam, then you will be fearful. So Krishna says, a little advancement on this path of devotion protects one from the most dangerous type of fear. And the most dangerous type of fear is that you descend into a life where you're further and further away from Krishna. Because it's proportionate. The further away you're from Krishna, the more fearful you will be. It's proportionate. One poet in the Vallabha Sampradaya, he says, just as a fisherman casts a net, and all the fishes are caught, except the fishes which are swimming next to his feet. Therefore, in the same way, all the living entities are caught in the nets of Maya, except the ones that are swimming at the lotus feet of Krishna. So you have to stay close. You have to keep... stay close. Don't go far away. Because the further away you get, the more you're... it's getting dangerous. It's like the Lakshman Rekha. There's a line around Sita Devi. And while you stay close inside the line, okay. outside, anything could happen. Yes, Maharaja.
Is there a space for fear in our lives?
Is there a space for fear? Yeah, it's kind of like if you walk across the road and a car's coming at 100 miles per hour and you're like, no, fearless. That might not be good for your health. I think there's a biological type of fear which is inbuilt within us, which is natural, which we need for survival. And then I think there's also a fear in spiritual life, a healthy type of fear. Prabhupada said, the only problem with my disciples is that they're not sufficiently fearful of Maya. I remember when Tribhuvannath Prabhu came to the manor and he was about to go for his cancer operation, then he was walking outside of the manor in the shoe room and one devotee stopped him and said, are you fearful? And he said, the only thing I'm fearful of in my life, he said it actually with such gravity. He said, the only thing I'm fearful of in my life is that I may offend a devotee. So, Vrindavan Das Thakur said it's very simple. Chant the holy name of Krishna and don't offend any devotees. So that's what he said. So yeah, there are definitely, I'm sure, within spiritual life there are healthy fears to have which keep us spiritually vibrant, spiritually close to Krishna. And then I guess there are biological fears that are inbuilt within our system which are required for survival. But the type of fear which is coming from illusion, coming from distance from Krishna, coming because we see another reality separate from Krishna, that fear, Bhagavatam tells us, is removed by. So yeah, that's the whole point of morning sadhana. It's like the first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is we realize I have nothing to do with this world. It's like to instill that meditation deep within one's consciousness. Like, I have nothing to do here. I have nothing to do with this world. But I have service and I have duties and I have an opportunity to render devotional service. Okay. But we function from a level where we don't identify with it in that sense. So anyway.
Maybe it's a basic question, but why does Arjuna fear the transcendental form of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita while he was closing it?
Arjuna is right in front of Krishna. So why does he have fear?
Yeah, I think he was. Yes, fear of universal form. The transcendental.
Oh, the transcendental form.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Chapter 11.
Yes. So here we're saying that when you're in front of Krishna, then you have no fear. But here was Arjuna in front of the universal form and he felt fear, felt fearfulness. I don't know if we can say this is a type of fearfulness which is the fearfulness which comes from Maya. This is a fearfulness seeing the fate of so many people that he loved, so many people that he cared for, so many people that he was compassionate towards. Like, it's not that when we become spiritually realized we lose all emotion. No, we still have emotion. Like, for example, the same Arjuna who heard the Bhagavad Gita and said, all my illusion is now gone because I understand I'm a spiritual being. 10 days later, his son Abhimanyu died, fell on the battlefield. And Arjuna went to that place. Krishna took him on the chariot and Arjuna began crying, the Mahabharata says. I was like, why are you crying? It is natural. And Krishna didn't preach to him. It's like, okay, here we go, I'm going to have to tell him the Bhagavad Gita again. No. You must. That's your son. But what did Arjuna do in the very next moment? He picked up his Gandiva bow and he carried on fighting. So when emotions overwhelm you and block you from doing your duty, then they are material emotions. But a devotee can still have spiritual emotions because we are beings of relationship. And still, it doesn't affect them in the higher sense. They continue with their duty. So when Arjuna saw the universal form, he saw all his family rushing into the mouths. It was, I mean, it's intense. So you don't become, the goal of Krishna consciousness is not to become emotionless. What Gaudiya teacher says, we are not trying to become free of attachment. We're trying to become slaves of love. Most spiritualists are trying to become free of attachment. That's not actually the goal of a Gaudiya. The goal of a Gaudiya is to become a slave of love. Because real life is emotional life, but spiritual emotions. And so in one sense we can say that, you know, the emotions, even that pure, like Krishna is running away from Mother Yashoda in fear, rubbing his eyes again and again. The Gopas are with Krishna in Vrindavan, but they feel fear when the demons come. Why? Krishna's there. What? But this is almost like it's emotional life. But it doesn't overwhelm, bewilder, or block your intelligence. When there is fear or anger or all of these things that blocks your intelligence, it's a material. Just like, for example, Nishingadev's anger is completely spiritual. And there are many reasons why you can prove that it's spiritual anger, but one basic argument is that normally anger, krodhat bhavati sammoha, anger covers your intelligence. But when Nishingadev comes, he's so intelligent, he's like transcendentally angry, but he has to kill Hiranyakashipu, so he figures out, I can't do it in the sky, I can't do it on the land, so let me do it here. I can't do it outside, I can't do it here, I'll do it here. I can't do it here. I mean, it's completely engineered how he comes. Like, I mean, for Krishna it's easy, but it requires a lot of thought, these things, you know. So it's clear that he wasn't clouded in intelligence. It was completely perfect intelligence, and at the same time transcendentally angry. So it's not material anger. So in the same way we can say like that. That the devotees experience emotional life, but in perfect Krishna consciousness. I see more hands, but I actually have to go to. Can we in the evening? What I'm thinking is we can just spend more time with question and answer and discussion. Just because I have to go online. So, okay. Thank you very much. Jantaraj and Bhagavatam ki jai. Jai.
So, Bhagavan Keshava Maharaj ki jai.